All right, number 1 says, which of the following is not equivalent to 50 hundredths times 4 over 10 times 1/10? All right, so first, before we look at our answer choices, we need to figure out what that equals. So I know that 50 hundredths times 4 is 2. 10 times 1/10 would be 1. 2 over 1 is just equal to 2. So now I can look at my answer choices to see which one is not equivalent. So let's look at A. So we need to solve all of these out in order to figure out which one is not equivalent. So A, we have 50 hundredths times 4, which we know is 2. And this is going to be multiplied by 10 times 1/10, which is 1. 2 times 1 is just 2, so that one is equivalent. 20 divided by 10 would be 2, so that one is equivalent. C says 50 times 4, which is 200, divided by 10 times 10, which is 100. 200 divided by 100 is 2, so that one is equivalent. So now let's look at D. We have 10 times 1/10, which equals 1, divided by 50 hundredths times 4, which equals 2. So really that means 1 divided by 2, which is just 1/2. So that is not equivalent, so D would be our answer. Alright, number 2, it says 1 inch is equivalent to 2 54 hundredths of a centimeter. How many inches are in 50 8/10 centimeters? Alright, so if we have 50 8/10 centimeters, we need to divide this by 2 54 hundredths centimeters in order to find out how many inches there are, because that's what we're looking for. So first I'm just going to write this problem out. I have 50 8/10 divided by 2 54 hundredths. Alright, it's very important that we make sure that we put the numbers in order. Okay, so first is like how much we have, the total. So if you have 50 8/10 centimeters, we're dividing that by 2 54 hundredths centimeters. Alright, so let's go ahead and set our problem up. Remember, the first number goes inside the house. Alright, so I cannot divide by a decimal. So to make this easiest on me, I have to move that decimal to make it a whole number so that I can divide. So remember, when we're dividing decimals, you have to move your decimal all the way to the right. So 1, 2. So now here's my new decimal. I'm going to cross this one off. Okay? However many decimal places you moved outside the house, you have to do the same thing inside the house in order to keep it the same, keep it equal. So I'm going to take this decimal and I'm going to move it 2 places. 1, 2. So there isn't a number here, so I'm going to put 0 here, and then I'm going to put my decimal, cross this one off. Now that we have our problem set up, we just divide like normal. Alright, so 254 goes into 508 2 times. 254 times 2 is equal to 508. So we'll subtract. My remainder is 0. I can't forget about this 0, so I got to bring it down. 254 goes into 0 times. 254 times 0 is 0. So my remainder is 0. That's my answer. So 20 inches. Alright, number 3, evaluate 4 and 5/6 divided by 9. So before we can divide fractions, we have to make them fractions all the way across. So I need to change my mixed number into an improper fraction. So to do that, I'm going to do 6 times 4, which gives me 24. Then I'm going to add my numerator. 24 plus 5 is 29. My denominator will stay the same. Now, before I'm just going to skip and make it a multiplication problem, I want to write my problem out with all fractions. So I'm going to keep my division sign. Positive 9 would be written as 9 over 1. Now that I have it set up with all fractions, I'm going to keep, change, flip. So I'm going to label it keep, change, flip. I'm going to keep the 29 over 6. I'm going to change my division to multiplication, and I'm going to flip the 9 over 1. I'm going to write the reciprocal, which is 1 over 9. Now I can multiply across. 29 times 1 is 29. 6 times 9 is 54. And that cannot be simplified, so that is my answer. Number 4, Mr. Martin's yard is 1 1/3 acres. He wants to plant grass on 1/6 of his yard. Which statement proves how many acres will be covered with grass? So first I need to figure out what the question is asking me. So really what I'm trying to find out is what is 1/6 of 1 1/3. Alright, remember anytime we have that of word, that tells us that we have to multiply. Alright, so I'm going to multiply 1 1/3 times 1/6. Alright, before I look at my answer choices, I'm just going to go ahead and solve this out. So first I need to change my mixed number to an improper fraction. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4, so I have 4 over 3 times 1 over 6. I'm going to multiply top times top, so 4 times 1 is 4. And then bottom times bottom, so 6 times 3 is 18. I have to simplify, so I'm going to divide by 2, divide by 2, and I get 2/9. So now that we have our answer, let's go ahead and look at the answer choices. A, we have 4/3 divided by 1/6 equals 2/9. Alright, well that's definitely not what we did. B says 1/3 times 1/6. That's not what we did. They just forgot completely about that whole number. C says 1 1/3 times 6 over 1. So it looks like they multiplied by the reciprocal, and this wasn't a division problem, so I know that C is not my answer. D says 1/6 times 4/3 equals 2/9. So they did mix up the two numbers, but remember with multiplication we can flip those numbers because it does have the commutative property. So that is my answer, D. Alright, number 5, Olivia is allowed 12 1/4 hours to ride her bike per week. How many hours is that per day? Alright, so we want to know if that's how much she's allowed to ride in 1 week, how many is that per day? Okay, so how many days are there in a week? There's 7. So we have to divide 12 1/4 divided by 7 to find out how many hours she can ride her bike per day. Alright, so first I need to change this to an improper fraction. So 4 times 12 is 48. 48 plus 1 is 49. So 49 over 4 divided by 7 would be written as 7 over 1. I'm dividing fractions, so I'm going to keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep my first fraction, flip my division to multiplication. Change my division to multiplication, and then flip the 7 over 1, so that would become 1 over 7. Now I'm going to multiply across, so 49 times 1 is 49. 4 times 7 would be 28. Alright, so I get an improper fraction, so I need to divide. So 49 divided by 28. Remember that the rider always goes inside the house. The horse stays outside. 28 goes into 49 one time. 1 times 28 is 28, so I gotta subtract, and I have 21 left over. So that 21 is my remainder. That's going to become my numerator. and my denominator will stay the same. But now I need to simplify. So I have 1 and 21 over 28. I'm going to simplify that so I can divide by 7 by the top and the bottom. 21 divided by 7 is 3. 28 divided by 7 is 4. So I get 1 3/4 hours per day that she can ride her bicycle. Alright, number 6, evaluate the expression. So first thing I'm going to do, since this is order of operations, is I'm going to make a checklist off to the side. So I'm going to use GMDOS. Alright, the first step is grouping. So I see that I have some parentheses in my problem, so that's what I'm going to start with first. So it looks like my numerator here is 3/3. I'm sorry, yeah, 3 cubed, take away 7 to the 0 power. So remember first that 7 to the 0 power, anytime the exponent is 0, you get 1. So now I need to find out what is 3/3. So this means 3 times 3 times 3, which is equal to 27. So I'm going to rewrite this, 8 plus 27 minus 1 over negative 13 times negative 1 divided by 1/6. Alright, so now I'm going to actually do my, my grouping and by solving. So 8 plus 27 minus 1 is 26. Negative 13 times negative 1, remember Angry Pizza Man says a negative times a negative is going to equal a positive. So I get 13 divided by 1/6. Alright, so now I've done my grouping. Alright, so now I need to check for any exponents. I don't see any, so I can go ahead and check that off. Next thing is multiplication or division. So I don't have any multiplication, but I do see division, so I'm going to underline that step. That's what we're going to do next. Alright, so here we are dividing fractions, so that means I need to keep, change, flip. So 26 over 13 times 6 over 1. 26 times 6 is 156. 13 times 1 is 13. Right, so 156 divided by 13 is 12. If you did not know that that was 12, you could do the math off to the side. So now I'm just going to rewrite what I have. So I have 8 plus 12 now. I've done my division. Now I'm going to do my addition or subtraction, so I'm going to underline it. 12 plus 8 is 20. Check that off, and that's my answer. Alright, number 7, true or false. The prime factorization of 150 is 3 squared times 5 times 2. If false, make this a true statement. So before we can check this, we have to either make a factor tree or do upside down division to come up with the prime factorization to see if they were correct or not. So I'm going to go ahead and do a factor tree. So what two numbers give me 150? So I'm going to say, let's see, 2 and 75. So is 2 a prime number? Yes, so I'm going to circle it. 75 is not a prime number, so I'm going to keep going. So 5 times 15 will give me 75. 5 is a prime number, so I'm going to circle it. 15 is not prime. 5 times 3 will give me 15. 5 is prime, so I'm going to circle that, and 3 is also prime. Okay? So now I'm going to rewrite this. 150 equals 2 times 3 times 5 times 5. Alright, if I want to write this in exponential form, this would be 150 equals 2 times 3 times 5 squared. Alright, so let's check theirs. They said 3 squared times 5 times 2. So that makes this statement false because they're not correct. And then here we made it where it was a true statement because we wrote the correct prime factorization. So that's my answer. Alright, number 8, evaluate the expression and then grid your answer. So here we're multiplying decimals. So first I'm just going to write this out like a normal multiplication problem. Now I notice I have a negative. I'm not going to worry about that negative. I'm going to use Angry Pizza Man at the very end to help me with my answer. So I'm just going to say 17 and 4/10 times 1 and 2/10. Alright, so remember with decimals you do not have to line them up. For this problem, ours just so happened to line up, but you don't have to. Remember the last step is to count how many decimals are after your decimal and then put that in your answer. So let's go ahead and solve this. 4 times 2 is 8. 7 times 2 is 14. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. Add my 0. 4 times 1 is 4. 7 times 1 is 7. 1 times 1 is 1. Now we're going to add. So I get 2,088, but now I have to count my decimal places. Alright, so here's one decimal place. Here's one decimal place. So that's how many I have to move my decimal in my answer. 1, 2. Alright, so 1, 2. So I get 20. And 88/100ths. Alright, so remember if we go back we have a negative times a positive. So a negative times a positive gives me a negative. So my answer is negative. I have to make sure that I bubble that into my grid here, otherwise the answer will be wrong. So negative 20 and 88/100ths is my answer. Alright, number 9, Cindy has to buy food from the chart below for her Halloween dessert. If she purchases 2/3 of a pound of marshmallows and 2 1/5 pounds of chocolate, what would be her total cost? So I see that word of, which tells me I gotta multiply. So we're looking at 2/3 of a pound of marshmallows. So I need to go to marshmallows on my table here. This problem has multiple steps. So $1.40 times 2/3. Then I have 2 1/5 pounds of chocolate. So I have to go to my chocolate and I'm going to multiply this by 2 1/5. And the last step will be to add the totals up to find my total cost. So this one has multiple steps. So first I'm going to look at the chocolate. I know that 2 1/5 is 2 2/10. So I find it easier to go ahead and multiply with my decimals. So when I multiply $3.05 times 2 2/10. Alright, so I went ahead and did the work off to the side for you. So you can check to see if you did your math correctly, but you should have gotten $6.71. That's the cost for the chocolate. So now I need to multiply 1 4/10 times 2/3. Alright, so I went ahead and I did the math for you. This one I kept as fractions, so I did 1 4/10 times 2/3. I changed it to an improper fraction, multiplied across, and I got 28/30. Alright, because it's money, I wanted to change that into a decimal, so I had to divide 28 divided by 30. Remember, the rider always goes inside the house, the horse has to stay outside. Okay, so make sure that you are doing that correctly. And I end up getting 93 cents. The 3 is repeating, but I'm just going to leave it as 93 cents, and now I need to add up my totals. So I have $6.71 plus 93 cents. Now remember, with adding decimals, you have to line up your decimals. 3 plus 1 is 4. 7 plus 9, 16. 6 plus 1 is 7. So the total cost is $7.64. Alright, number 10, at Becky's Bakery, Stephen purchased 5/8 of a cheesecake to share with himself and 3 others. How much cheesecake did each person get? So if I have 5/8 of a cheesecake and I'm sharing it amongst people and I want to know how much each person gets, I have to divide. Now, it's very important to pay attention. It says himself and 3 others, so that means you're splitting it up amongst 4 people. So I have 5/8 divided amongst 4 people. Alright, so first I need to change that 4 to 4 over 1. Now I'm going to keep, change, flip, keep the 5/8, change the division to multiplication, and flip that 4 over 1 to 1 over 4. Then I can multiply across, and I get 5 over 32. That cannot be simplified, so they each get 5 over 32 of the cheesecake. That's how much they get a piece. Alright, so here are your answers for number 12. I'm going to go ahead and just go through them with you really quickly. Number 12 says, decide if the following are true or false. So A says, when dividing fractions, you divide by the reciprocal. Remember that when we're dividing fractions, that's actually, we have to multiply the reciprocal, because we do keep, change, then flip. So that is false. B says, when multiplying fractions less than 1, your product will decrease. That statement is true, and you can test this out with yourself. You can pick 2 fractions less than 1, multiply them by each other, and you will see that the product decreases. So 1/2 times 1/2 gives me 1/4. So that's a smaller product, so that statement is true. C says, when multiplying a mixed number by a value less than 1, your product will increase. That is false. I tested this one out also. I did 1/2 times 1/2. So that changes to 3/2 times 1/2. That gives me 3/4. So my product decreased. So that statement was false. D says, dividing by a rational and multiplying by its reciprocal will result in equivalent values. That is true. If you take 4 divided by 1/2, if we were to solve that, that would be 4 over 1 times 2 over 1, which equals 8. So half of 4 divided by 1/2 equals 8, and 4 times 2 over 1 also equals 8. So they're equivalent, and that statement was true. E says, dividing 2 decimals less than 1 will result in smaller quotients. So I also tested this one out, and I did 4/10 divided by 2/10, and I saw that my answer was bigger, not smaller. So that statement was false.